And welcome once again to another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. I'm Bob McDonald. I am the Cleveland State columnist over at More Than a Fan Cleveland. As always, you can catch me on Twitter at Bob McDonald and every week at cleveland.morethanafan.net. And of course, I am joined, as usual, by Jimmy Lemke.
Hello. How's it going, Bob?
Oh, it's going. And of course, you can catch Jimmy over at PantherU.com and on Twitter at PantherU.
Yes.
Lots to get through, but the big news this week, and there's no way of getting around it. Wright State. Everybody was wondering if Valparaiso was going to run the table on the HoriZone League, and the Raiders gave us a big fat no on Friday night.
Well, I didn't think that was really going to happen. Valparaiso's a great team. To think of it, in the modern HoriZone League, there's only been one team that has run the table in the HoriZone League, and that was Butler in 2010, and they were the national runner-up, and that was definitely, while they had finished the same in 2011, that was still their better team was in 2010, since you had Gordon Hayward. Mm-hmm. And that's Butler as the Final Four team. So there are teams there are only 5 teams in the history of the HoriZone League of the modern, since we changed to the HoriZone League and added Youngstown State. Since then, there's only been 5 teams that have finished with 2 or fewer losses in conference, and 4 of them won at least one game in the NCAA tournament. Yep. And the 5th was Green Bay in 2014. So if you're a Green Bay fan, sorry, not sorry.
Wow.
Hey, we went into their place and stole their greatest season of the last 20 years. So I have no problem with saying that. But yeah, so I mean, the other 4 teams, I believe we have Butler's 07 team, our Sweet 16 team from it's our Sweet 16 team from 2005, or it was our Sweet 16 team, Butler's Sweet 16, and the national runner-up of the first one. So quite a nice group of teams.
Sure.
To get there. Green Bay in 2014 was definitely a good program. I don't know if they would have gotten the Sweet 16. They certainly had the talent to win
definitely
the tournament. And they did have the problem of, having the injuries towards the end of the year. Alec Brown had hurt his shoulder, and Kiefer Sykes got hurt in the semifinal game against us, although both of them played like 35 minutes. So,
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, they're going to go through that, of course. But yeah. And the other thing, and here's the other amazing part, because during the win, Wright State, and I don't know if this is, I guess I must have grossly underestimated Wright State this year. I mean, they did kind of start out really slow. I mean, they started out really slow. But then they turned around, clamped down on defense, and, they've been, pretty amazing.
Pretty darn good. It's a really good program. I wasn't worried about them. I know a lot of people will just look at it and be like, yeah, whatever, roll their eyes at me for saying that. But, you're just like everybody else. None of us really thought they were any good. And I strongly disagree. All you need to do is go and look at the Panther U season preview for the HoriZone League, for the conference preview. And you'll see that I pretty much laid it out there. Wright State was a team that was dogged by injuries. They've had, before the HoriZone League started, there had only been 3 players on the entire team that had played in every game. And there had only been, they had started 10 people up to that point. It's not a joke that it's not, a bad team all of a sudden turning around and becoming good. It's a unhealthy team turning around and getting healthy over the Christmas break. They're putting together their full roster, and it's a good roster. Yeah. It really is top to bottom. I think that in a lot of ways, their team is a lot like Valpo's defensively, in that Michael Corena has really become a fantastic post defender.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing about that, and this is the one thing that I thought was extremely, maybe kind of unorthodox, but you look at their lineup and Hughes, Benzinger, Allstork, and Thomason, all of them are listed as guards. And they've all started. So theoretically, if you look at it that way, you have, and then Michael Corena in the middle, you have 4 guards and a center. And
there's a lot of length though
coming off the bench.
They've got a lot of length on that team.
And JT Yoho is a really good guy to have on the bench.
Yeah, is he still leading the conference in 3-point shooting? He was the last time I saw.
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't doubt it.
Oh no, he's all the way down to 43%. Wow.
Oh well.
He's still top 10, but that's pretty incredible that he's at 10th now. Number 1 is now Matt Donlin at Youngstown State, which would be fortunate.
We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that. Anyway,
Valpo is now. I don't think many people really thought that Valpo was going to run the table.
And I think that was and even when you're talking, even when you look at kind of the bracketologists out there, they were of the assumption that Valpo was probably going to lose at least 1 or 2 games and could lose about 1 or 2 games in conference and still be thought of as an at-large hopeful. So it's not entirely the end of the world for Valpo losing this 1 game.
Yeah.
So
if you're gonna pick you have your 9 teams to play against over 18 games in the conference season, and say you had to pick 2 losses to take, and then you're not guaranteed in every other game, I'd probably pick losing at Wright State in the Nutter Center.
Yeah.
Just because they're so good at home. They have been good at home for a long time. I don't know if I would consider, like, Detroit's got that really great home record right now, but do I really consider Detroit to be this great home team?
No.
Or has Detroit just not played many good teams at home? I mean, just to go through the list of the teams that they've played at home, Central State, Michigan, Dearborn, Northeastern, Toledo, Bowling Green, Central Florida, Youngstown, Cleveland, and UIC. So really... until Valpo, they didn't. Then they lost to Valpo and Oakland, but really, out of all those teams, Toledo's probably the only one that is really good, and then Northeastern's kind of getting there, but the rest of them are all ho-hum teams. So Detroit was not like, oh, they're such this great home team. They just had a lot of easy home games. Wright State beaten South Dakota at home. Well, they had beaten them at the Northern Illinois tournament. We lost to South Dakota, and they had beaten them. And as soon as I saw those results, I knew that Wright State was better than this losing streak that they had gone against.
Yeah.
Besides their non-Division I wins against Mount St. Joseph and Albion, they lost a bunch of straight games. They lost Cal State, Northridge, Northern Illinois, Kentucky, George Mason, Georgia State, Xavier, and Miami of Ohio. Now, out of all those teams, they lost to Northridge was by 5. If they were at full strength, they'd probably win that game.
Yes.
Northern Illinois was by 6. At full strength, they'd probably win that game. Kentucky was by 15. I don't know if they win that game, but it's closer.
Yeah, certainly.
George Mason beat them by 27, so that's probably a no. Georgia State, they lost to Georgia State by 13, but Georgia State's a really good team.
That's true.
And then Xavier was a blowout, but Xavier is a top 15, top 20 team in the country.
Yeah, they are.
Their loss to Miami of Ohio was also by 5. So really, if you take away, you take the Green Bay loss because they were at full strength for that. They lose at Green Bay. They probably lose the Xavier game, probably lose Georgia State, and probably lose Kentucky and George Mason. So they probably could be as good as 15-5 right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
they could be.
Well, except including today, so they could be 16-5.
Yeah, well, they did beat UIC. So yeah, they're 7-1. They're 7-1 in conference, and they're tied with Valpo, and they're in it. I mean, they are in now. They are in the conversation. While they may not necessarily have been in the conversation before, they sure are now. I mean, that's kind of goes without saying.
I had been on the Wright State pro board's message board, like telling these people, like, yeah, they get on Donlan's case, but I'm telling you, he had a lot of injuries to deal with this year and last year. So, and also the off the court stuff that's not really his fault, like with Tavares Sledge and a couple of the other guys. So kind of get off his case, let him happen. I mean, we're talking about coaches and fan bases later, but really, with Wright State, I just wanted to bring that up briefly because Billy Donlan's a very good basketball coach. And I don't think Wright State fans know what they have in him, and it's about having a team that can stay on the court and stay healthy. So if Wright State can stay healthy through the rest of the year, I mean, they're in the driver's seat right now. If they beat Valpo at Valpo, that's one up on Valpo, not including all the rest of the games and the sweep. So they would have to lose another 2 games. And Valpo would have to win the rest of them. Valpo would have to be 2 games better than them for the rest of the year if Wright State beats them there.
Yeah.
So this conference, I mean, it's too early, definitely, but this conference is definitely riding on what happens at Valpo when Wright State travels there. I mean, that has become a gigantic game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is probably, and playing at the Arc is going to be just as tough as playing at the Nutter Center, if not more so. We definitely talked it out
last week. I mean, we were there. I felt like we had them. Our players were, we were really mixing it up, and we were up. I think we were up at 8 or 10 at one point in the first half, and then they just flipped a switch and turn it on. And they did it without Alec Peters. He only scored 7 points against us. But we let the rest of the team beat us.
Yeah.
I think
the rest of the team can do. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think the way to beat Valpo is to let Alec Peters do his thing and get everybody else taken care of, because 9 times out of 10 Alec Peters is going to get his 20 points. So you just got to hope that you don't want to give him easy baskets at the basket. No. Let him do the jump shots. And if he makes the jump shots, so be it. But he's taking low percentage shots, and then you're taking care of everybody else. So, you just have to body up certain people. I mean, we had the bad luck that Vachel Fernandez all of a sudden came out and had a huge offensive game, which is not something he usually does.
He did that against Youngstown too, by the way.
Yeah, every now and then. I mean, when you don't have somebody that can keep an eye on Vachel down low, which is partly because what happened with Youngstown State, because they don't have Bobby Hain. He's gonna run roughshod over you, and that's because Vachel's just so big, and he's got such long arms that he can do pretty much whatever he wants. He's just not very skilled down low. He actually has very little skill offensively.
But clearly he had himself he had himself a matchup in Corona this time around. I mean, he got the.
I think Corona is a great example of how Billy Donlan is a great coach, because when Corona had first really come into the league, he really did not know what he was doing defensively in the post. And over in the game that we played him, and in the Valpo game, and in a couple of other ones, you really see Corona has blossomed into, I don't know if I'd call him an elite defender in the post, but he is a very good defender for the HoriZone League level.
Yes, absolutely.
They can funnel people towards him, and he doesn't foul easily. So this is not a guy that's going to foul out in 6 out of 7 games. This is a guy that's going to make sure that he doesn't foul, but he's still going to. I mean, he stays straight up quite a bit. He keeps his hands to the sky, and he doesn't draw stupid fouls.
Sure.
So they can funnel players to him, and he can act as the big guy and make sure that nobody's scoring too much or having too easy of baskets down low. Yeah. So what I think makes Wright State dangerous, besides defensively, I think they're just a really strong defensive team. But what makes them dangerous offensively is that pretty much, 6 or 7 guys on that team could score 15 points in a game.
And they have. Friday, the win, you had Thomason and Yoho score more than 15. Today it was Mark Allstork. Also had Yoho in there
too.
Yeah, he was light. Yeah, and Biggie Minnis was in it too today. I mean, from top to bottom, Wright State has a lot of different scorers, and how do you game plan for any one of them who could go off at any point in time? I mean, the Cleveland State win, Michael Corena went off, so I mean, it is.
You can't just protect the basket by playing a zone. You can't just protect the basket by playing a post-heavy zone because they shoot the 3 very well.
They do.
And, a lot of players on the
and they proved that again, and they proved that again against UIC today. My most favorite part of the whole game on against Valpo was the Grant Benzinger buzzer beater. Did you happen to see that at all?
I did. It was right. He was right past the free throw line. I thought it was pretty great. Did that end up on the SportsCenter top 10? Because if it didn't, it should.
I don't know, but it should have. Because that was a thing of beauty.
I try not to watch SportsCenter. I don't want people to know that I actually watch them out there.
I don't need to watch SportsCenter. I have Twitter.
Yeah,
I'm good. People show vines and clips online all the time. I don't need SportsCenter, so I'm good. And besides, most of the stuff they're talking about SportsCenter, they're talking about, it's usually about, I don't know. Basically, it's talking about, basically stuff I don't really care about anyway, so it doesn't matter. Right. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This is going to set up for a very interesting. Rematch up at the Arc. And not just that, you're also probably going to have a revenge match too, where you have, because remember, Wright State lost to Green Bay up in Green Bay. So, I mean, not of course to say that, Wisconsin isn't far and away the toughest road trip for anybody, but I
think it's a difficult road trip just because of the travel and the cold for some teams.
It's out in the hinterlands.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when you get out of the bus in Green Bay. Yeah. it's just kind of nuts. I don't think that there's this great home court advantage. I don't think the fans at Green Bay are particularly rabid, and I think our fan base is. It's hard. It's hard to be me and be in that fan base. I mean, we have people come out, but they're quiet. They're so quiet. Like they're watching a performance art piece.
Or in the library.
They're not quiet on the quiet on the message board. They love talking garbage about Rob Jeter. Like, giving up
I will say this. That said, another key matchup is going to be on Friday because you're going to have Wright State going up to the arena. And I am very interested in seeing what happens with Oakland, what the hell happened to them? I mean,
I think that it's going to show us. I think it's going to show us pretty much where Oakland stands.
Yeah.
Because if Oakland gets Wright State to run with them, and Oakland wins that game, then Oakland can look at the other teams and say, "Look, this is our signature win right now." Because at the moment, their signature win is Detroit, which is a good win. Don't get me wrong, but you didn't beat Valpo and you didn't beat Wright State.
And you lost to Youngstown, and you lost to Northern Kentucky.
Right. You didn't take care of business against the teams that you needed to take care of business against.
And speaking of Northern Kentucky, I mean, Northern Kentucky is not in last place. I know we talked a little bit about kind of their whole resurgence. Basically, I mean, how they're kind of the young guys, and they're just starting and everything. But the Oakland win is huge, and then they turn around and beat UIC too. So they got 3 wins under their pocket.
Yes. 3-5, which is not great. Obviously, I think we're pretty much on the nose. Earlier when we were talking about how Detroit and Northern Kentucky are, there's pretty much a line in between them.
Yes.
There's a space between 6th and 7th, and that is a wider berth than it is for most of the teams.
Yeah, it is.
But I will say that it really looks like Northern Kentucky may be the best of that bottom 4.
They do now.
It wouldn't be terribly surprising. I'm trying to remember what Valpo was their first year when they had Igboboa and was it McPherson? So Brandon McPherson was the
Yeah, I think it was McPherson.
Yeah, I mean they were a pretty darn good team. We were really excited to have them come in.
Yeah, I think everybody was.
They didn't light the world on fire, and I think it wasn't until 2010 or 2011. It was actually the 2010-11 season where Valpo really turned it on and looked like they were going to be one of the best teams. Because they had in 2011. They had a hold of first place until like a week or so left in the regular season.
Yeah, because remember that was the second year of the Butler. That was the second. That turned out to be the second Butler run in the NCAA tournament. And you're absolutely right. It was a matter, but Valpo was kind of leading that whole thing. It was Butler was kind of. It looked like Butler was kind of having a down year, but apparently they were just they were just playing possum because they turned around, won the tournament, and then got back into the NCAA tournament and made the finals for 2 years in a row, which that's an impossible feat, especially for a mid-major, as they were at the time.
Yeah, the second year is a little bit of a sore spot for me because we didn't have a good game plan, and they bottled up Anthony Hill in that title game. I mean, we had beaten them at Butler in overtime, and we had mopped the floor with them at the arena by 24 in January that year. So we were very confident that we were going to beat them going into the NCAA tournament and go to the NCAA tournament in that title game. You probably wouldn't be surprised to hear this. We were a lot more afraid of Cleveland State than we were of Butler in 2011.
Oh yeah, because that Cleveland State team in 2010, 2011, that was the Norris Cole senior year. Plus you had Montgomery. Plus you had Harmon. Plus you had Aaron Pogue, which is interesting because for the entire time he was here, we had a love-hate relationship with the guy. But thinking back now, he was definitely more than a serviceable big man.
Yeah, I mean, we always had a problem with Aaron Pogue. He was from Dayton too, wasn't he?
He too. He was from Dayton Dunbar, same as Norris.
He and they were in high school at the same time, huh?
I believe. I think Pogue was. I want to say Pogue was probably about a year younger. Probably. I cannot remember, but yeah. But
yeah. How about those two guys that Wright State let go under their nose?
Yeah, I know. I told you.
How about those two guys that Dayton let go under their nose?
Hey, you know what? Like I've said many times, Gary Waters has Dayton Dunbar on lock. So because also Andre Yates, Dayton Dunbar. So no, and then we're getting in. What's the gentleman's name? One of our new recruits is also Evan Claiborne. He transferred from Dayton Dunbar. He's playing at Thurgood Marshall in Dayton. So
hey, why is it that Billy Donlin's not able to recruit his own backyard is what I'm wondering. I mean, Norris Cole and Aaron Pogue,
Yeah, they kind of Norris Cole mostly laid the foundation now. So Dayton Dunbar is going to be a pretty tough nut to crack for anybody but Cleveland State. So that's kind of how it went. all because Gary Waters recruited a kid who only got one scholarship to a Division II team and was thinking about playing football.
Norris Cole was thinking about playing football, huh?
Yeah, because yep. So I mean that's the story, the legend of Norris Cole. But back to our other point about kind of Northern Kentucky and their kind of premier. See, Northern Kentucky is a little bit more behind the eight ball this year than Valpo was when they came into the HoriZone League, because at least Valpo had come from the Summit League and was, there was a winning. Kind of a winning tradition there, of course.
They had won a bunch of
in a row
Summit titles.
Yeah, they pretty much own that league.
We're basically consolidating our power by getting them, just like we did with Oakland.
Sure.
It was taking away what was good from the other Midwestern mid-major conference.
Yeah.
Before we could do it, before they could, usurp us.
Exactly. But Northern Kentucky is an interesting situation because Northern Kentucky is unique in the fact that they're still this is their last year of their provisional Division I, because they just came up from Division II. They spent a year in the Atlantic Sun. They spent a season in the Atlantic Sun, which being Northern Kentucky, the Atlantic Sun is. They stick out like a sore thumb because they're obviously the northernmost member of that division. And, the Atlantic Sun is pretty much a way station for anybody who goes through Division I at this point, them in the Western Athletic Conference now.
I know that Lipscomb would like to be in our conference too.
Who's that again?
Lipscomb.
Oh, yes. Lipscomb's not coming until Belmont gets here. So, and unless that happens.
But then again, there may never be a time when Belmont would come to the HoriZone League, just because
not as a full-time member.
They had feelers out when the MVC went for Loyola.
Mm-hmm.
Belmont had feelers from the MVC, and they passed. So my guess is we'll never see Belmont as a member of the HoriZone League unless the Ohio Valley Conference just starts falling apart.
I don't see that happening. I really don't. I mean, unless some things that happen kind of outside of it. I mean, unless you have one of those OVC schools decide that they're gonna, because remember, OVC is predominantly they have except for Belmont, all the rest of the teams, all the rest of the schools in there, they have football. So unless one of them decides that they want to go to Division 1A or the bowl, the whatever they call it now, the bowl, the FBS division,
and then the football championship subdivision.
Yeah, exactly. So the football bowl subdivision, if they go to, they're in FCS now. If they go to the FBS division, then then they go to, so one of those teams go, and then, it's kind of all bets off. But I don't really necessarily see that happening in the near term.
The OVC is definitely a conference where you shouldn't expect that out of their programs.
No.
Missouri Valley would have a much you'd see Missouri Valley teams start doing that first. In fact, there's some discussion with the MVC football schools of should they all just go as a group up to FBS.
Well, there's and interestingly enough, now that you mentioned that, if they all do that all at once, guess who's in that division in football?
Youngstown.
Youngstown is in that division in football. So
they wouldn't. I think. What we have to remember is that the Missouri Valley Football Conference and the Missouri Valley Conference, though they share offices, are actually separate entities. So they're not the same. They aren't the same thing. So Youngstown wouldn't have to leave the HoriZone League. I don't think Youngstown State's ever going to leave the HoriZone League until we force them to. And now that Northern Kentucky's in, there's still the two Ohio schools. I don't see the votes there to kick out Youngstown.
No.
It's just it's unfortunate because I think there's a group of basketball-centric schools specifically Detroit, Oakland, Milwaukee, Valpo. I think UI will get there, and Green Bay's there too, but Green Bay kind of has the budget issues that Youngstown has. I think that the votes. I think the votes are almost split down the middle of the 9 schools as to who would vote to kick out Youngstown State.
Cleveland State
Because
never would. They would not.
No, and that's because you're so close to each other. That has nothing to do with, like, I don't know if it has to do with rivalry so much as, why would we kick out a team that's so close to us? We're not close to them, so we don't have that connection.
No.
I don't think I would trust our athletic director to make that vote. If I were athletic director, I would be leading the charge in that. But then again, it is what it is. Youngstown State's not it's just a dumpster fire of a basketball program, and it's never going to change. They're gonna pull off big upsets, as they did this year with Oakland back in 2011. They beat Butler. They do pull off good wins, and there have been years where they have not been an easy out, but at the same time, they 80% of the time it's still Youngstown State. So they're lucky now that UIC is as bad as they are, and that Cleveland State it seems to be in this flat tailspin. I mean, it's pretty sad what's going on in Cleveland. To see them lose that game today. I mean, you're a fan, so I don't need to tell you, but
no, you really don't.
I'm just saying, Youngstown's just never going to get there. I believe that Cleveland State can get back there. I'm pretty sure UIC is going to get back there, and all of that's good. I just don't see Youngstown ever being there, and I think Green Bay is kind of getting towards the end, but that's really a budgetary thing, not so much anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have this idea as a conference that I think they got this idea that 10 is a nice round number.
Yes.
When we've proven that 8 has been the best number for us in '98. So had we got rid of Youngstown instead of adding Northern Kentucky, we'd probably be in much better shape right now. And that's not a knock against Northern Kentucky. It's just, it wasn't that long ago when Butler was part of the conference and we talk about expansion, we never brought up any possibility of bringing on a provisional Division I school. There was never any indication that we would even consider such an idea. Why would we bring on a provisional D1 school when we can just we can stand pat and wait till that provisional school is ready to go and then bring them. But c'est la vie. Things aren't the way they used to.
The thing, and again, this is the other thing with Northern Kentucky, and this is kind of why, I know we alluded to it last week about, why it's a good thing that they're here, despite the fact that they're a provisional. They do have, even at Division II, they did have a tradition. They did have a good winning program, because in the 90s, we're talking about you're talking about a D2, consistent D2 Final Four team. And even, in the 2000s, you had yourself a consistent, D2 tournament contender. So,
and there's two schools in the conference that we can point to that we're just as, we're also very good Division II teams, those being Oakland and Wright State.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially Oakland.
Greg Campy will talk about all day about how, some of his biggest battles as head coach at Oakland were against Northern Kentucky when they were both in Division II. So, the funny thing is
he clearly had one on his hands this time around too.
Yeah, they've got it's funny that Oakland and Northern Kentucky have a history and an established rivalry to come back to, which is pretty similar to when Oakland joined the conference and all of a sudden they could get back to their former mid-con rivalry with Valpo. It's really funny how that is that all these schools in the Midwest, we shuffle conferences, but we do have history with each other, and a lot of times long history with each other, even without even when we go from conference to conference. So it's good that Northern Kentucky's there, that they have tradition. It's really good that Northern Kentucky is a program that has no facilities problem whatsoever.
No, they those facilities, that B&T arena, that is a really sharp facility.
The BB&T Arena, which is sounds better than Bank of Kentucky Arena, the former name. BB&T I think it's immediately the best facility in the conference. The Nutter Center is 20 some years old. The Wolstein Center is 20 some years old and too big. The Rush Center is 15 years old. Our arena is 60 years old, 62 years old now. And they're all of similar size. Valpo's Arc is, really a Division III building, and the UIC Pavilion was built for hockey. So really, when we're looking at like what facilities are, you want to point to Northern Kentucky. Look at this, this 9,000 seat palace that they built only 5 or 6 years ago, and it looks like it'll stand the test of time, much like the Nutter Center has. So I'm excited to have them for 5 to 10 years from now. I'm not excited to have Northern Kentucky for today. I know that it would be better for us to have them.
Yeah.
It was a better long-term decision to pluck them up, because if we hadn't plucked them up, that the Summit would have, or the Ohio Valley would have. And if they had gone to either of those conferences and then turned into the power that we had thought they would become, then the HoriZone League would be further down the pecking order again, and we'd be stuck with Youngstown State again, and we'd just be kicking we'd be thrashing with the water, we'd be treading water. And I'm happy that they've been proactive. Oh shit. So when I say that Northern Kentucky is an addition for 5 to 10 years from now, I'm not saying that Northern Kentucky is not a good program that we should want right now. I'm just saying that they're not very helpful to us right now. We want them because we don't want to lose them to the Ohio Valley or the Summit, then have them turn out to be very good, and then hurt us down the road by strengthening the conference that they're in, moving that conference above us. I don't think that Northern Kentucky is an anchor down the road. I think Northern Kentucky is somewhat of an anchor right now, but that's just because they're still a Provisional D1 school. So when I say that I wanted to cut Youngstown instead of adding Northern Kentucky, it wasn't a negative towards Northern Kentucky. It's just that they were the latest team to jump on the bus, and I would have much rather kicked Youngstown's asses off the bus than bring somebody else in. It probably isn't going to happen, just because there's too many teams. There's too many programs that may think that they're in a tenuous position. There's a lot of programs that are somewhat close by. So I think you need a super majority. I think you need 7 out of 9 teams to vote to remove a team, if not unanimous. So
yeah, it's basically a whole lot of not happening.
It's not going to happen. It's unfortunate. And we also at Milwaukee, we've got somewhat of a problem of being in the same conference as Green Bay, although Green Bay has been a great basketball program.
Mm-hmm.
There's some academic issues with being in the same conference as them. Being in the same conference as them, as Green Bay, kind of elevates their status among people in the state of Wisconsin versus us. We don't really. It doesn't so much. Maybe I shouldn't say it elevates them so much as it pulls us towards their level. And there are a lot of kids that will choose between Oshkosh, which is a little bit closer to Green Bay than Milwaukee, but to use a school that both our schools compete with for students. Oshkosh is in Division III. It's double the size of Green Bay, but less than half the size of Milwaukee. Academically, we are much closer to Wisconsin than we are to the rest of the UW schools.
Yeah.
So for us to be in the same conference as the third smallest school in the UW system out of 12 schools, for us to be in the same conference as them, where they're pretty much like, I don't want to say they're a glorified community college, is what Green Bay is. They
Okay.
have a very nice GPA for incoming students, but overall, I mean, what the school does is really not. It's not a high. It's not like we are a public urban doctoral research university. We are top 100 in business, top 20 in architecture, top 5 in film. We're nationally ranked in a bunch of stuff. We're a good academic school that's getting better every year, and it's hard for us in Milwaukee to kind of separate ourselves from Green Bay when Green Bay doesn't, when they're in the same conference as us. So the prospective college students in the state of Wisconsin largely don't believe that Milwaukee is head and shoulders above the rest of the UW schools this side of Madison when it is. And that's um, every school in the UW system is a great school, a nice school. They all have they all have, serve a great purpose. Some of them have really nice master's programs. I had considered myself taking the sports management program at La Crosse after graduation. I didn't do it. There's some other ones. They're all good schools. I'm just saying that Milwaukee is a school that covers a lot more bases and is a much bigger school and
Caters to a much larger population, obviously.
right. And I mean, we have 28,000 students, and we're on the back end of, when I graduated, we had 32,000 students, and we've gone down because the college age population in Wisconsin is shrinking quite a bit. But we're on the downside of it. The college age population is going to be going up in a few years, so it's kind of it's a matter of academics, not a matter of athletics. Green Bay doesn't have a lot of money. They probably won't be able to keep up with the rest of the HoriZone League with budgets rising as they are, but they've achieved quite a bit. That athletic department probably doesn't get the recognition that it should for how much they've achieved with so little resources.
Absolutely.
I think I would go as far as to say that Green Bay gets more bang for their buck than any school in the HoriZone League, bar none.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
They achieve well in men's basketball. They are the gold standard of programs in the Midwest for women's basketball. I'm not even saying HoriZone League. Green Bay women's basketball is by far the best women's basketball program in the state. If they lose to Marquette or Wisconsin in women's basketball, they kind of like look around and wonder why it happened. The same way I'm sure Wisconsin fans were looking around like, why did we just lose to Milwaukee?
Sure. So
there's quite a lot of good things about Northern Kentucky to be in the conference. I'm just saying that they don't elevate the conference at the moment. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, depending on how fast they figure it out, how fast Brandon really gets the train chugging down the tracks, they could be a really great program in 5 to 10 years.
I will go one step further. I think just based upon the progress that they've made this year, I think Northern Kentucky will be in the conversation, if not competing for a HoriZone League title, at least in the upper half of the conference within 2 to 3 years. I think I think just based upon what I have seen to this point with that team, I think they have the ability to reach the upper half, to be able to compete with the upper half of the conference in 2 to 3 years. And I think it goes back to kind of what they came out from, where they came from despite them coming from Division II, they come from a winning tradition in Division II. Otherwise, I think it would have just been a plain mistake for them to even bother with it. Like for example, the slash schools in Indiana. So I mean,
I really would. If I had been the czar of Northern Kentucky, I really wish they would have built the BB&T Arena, the Bank of Kentucky Center, whatever it was when it started. I really wish they had built it at 6,000 seats rather than 9,000.
You think so?
We have this idea that arenas should be bigger in the Midwest. We have this idea that a really good mid-major program should have about 10,000 seats. And I think that's false.
Yeah, I think we talked about this.
Yeah, we did when we had the Detroit guys on.
Yeah, we talked about this, that you have the big programs are even them, they Duke Cameron has what, 9,000 you said, Butler has 9,000. 9,000 seems to be kind of the, even for a top program, seems to be kind of the limit, really.
You have to make it a tough ticket, because you have to have people want to be willing to work to get into your games. That's what San Diego State has going on right now,
which we talked about a couple weeks ago.
I mean, that's what some of those schools have right now is a tough ticket. It's hard to get tickets to these games. So for a school like, I think that arena size is 90% of Cleveland State's problem. I really do. I think if the Wolstein Center were 4,000 seats, Cleveland State would be in a much better position than it is right now. And like Cleveland State, Northern Kentucky owns that arena.
Uh-huh.
So the problem with that arena being 9,000 seats is if a entertainment act, a musician, or the WWE or something comes to Cincinnati, of which Northern Kentucky is a suburb, is in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming to Cincinnati. Why would they go to the 9,000 seat BB&T Arena when they can go to the 10,000 seat Cintas Center in Cincinnati?
See, with Cleveland State, it's a little different because you have the 13,000 seat Wolstein Center, but down the street you have the 20,000 seat Quicken Loans Arena, and you have and in that case, you have a matter of a venue that's far bigger. That's
is the Gund Arena the Q?
Yes, it is. Yes, we changed it to Quick. Yes, when Dan Gilbert bought the team, obviously he owns Quicken Loans as well. That's how that whole thing came about.
Okay, so I didn't know if you guys had built a new arena. I didn't know that.
No, we changed our name. We changed the name of the arena from Gund Arena to Quicken Loans Arena, which is awesome because anytime I hear the words Gund Arena, I think of an STD, man. It's no progress.
Gund Arena.
No progress. If you say it too fast, you can have some problems.
Maybe they should have called it the Gun Center.
Possibly. I don't know. They weren't really, I think they were just more interested in getting that thing up than anything and just kind of moving them out of the old Richfield Coliseum, because the Richfield Coliseum it was, a good half hour away from downtown. And think of it as where the Pistons play in the Powerhouse of Auburn Hills right now, where Auburn Hills is located in proportion to Detroit. That's what the Cavs had when they were playing at Richfield, in proportion to downtown Cleveland.
Before the Wolstein Center, where did Cleveland State play?
Woodland Gym.
How many seats is it?
Woodland Gym is 3,500, and I'm sure you had to get creative with that, but yeah.
It sounds like Woodland Gym is exactly what the Klachi Center is.
It is. It's an actual gym, and I think the big thing, and this is probably the big thing at Cleveland State, is the not only the issue of the arena itself, but an issue, and I know Gary Waters has talked about this multiple times, about having a practice facility that is on campus, that is close to the actual buildings. Wolstein Center is clearly not.
How far is the Wolstein Center from campus?
It's a good 2 blocks away from campus. because
How many blocks?
it's a good 2 to 3 blocks away from the rest of campus.
Really?
So when you have a venue that is, and across the street from it is basically nothing. I mean, you think of the types of amenities and attractions, restaurants, bars, whatever that you have, say for example, across the street from other venues like Quicken Loans Arena or anywhere else. Those aren't there. I mean, across the street from the Wolstein Center is the highway and the Salvation Army. I can't make that up.
Are there any like alumni who are like big time real estate developers?
No, but there are actually most of the alumni are just, from what I can tell, and there's really a couple of them. They're businessmen, but most of them are just donating on the a lot of them, as far as I know, are donating on the academic side. I mean, we got.
But
as it relates to basketball, no, because if we had somebody who was, if we had one of those rich donors who was donating to basketball, we'd have a scoreboard. We'd have an actual scoreboard instead of the ones.
Well, I know that you want to be able to pull in. You have to be able to pull in donors from academics to become athletics donors.
Yeah.
Sometimes athletics donors will get. A lot of times, athletics donors are also academic donors, and they're actually athletics donors first, but they get pulled in academics. Right now, our biggest athletic
Cleveland State. The opposite is true. The opposite is true because we have we have 3 big donors. One of them owns his own company. One of them is the CEO of Parker Hannafin, and then there's another gentleman, another business owner. Their big deal is donating academically. If there is something that needs to be donated academically at Cleveland State, these are the guys to talk to. They are the ones to talk to. On the athletic side, it's weird because it's not that component does not look like it's really there. Now, with that said, it's not to say that they don't get the donations. Medical Mutual just donated $1.5 million to Cleveland State to renovate the the tennis courts. So now it's under it used to be an open air tennis court for the tennis teams, and now it's going to be in it's going to be a 365 year round facility now. It's not to say that those things are the case, but to the extent where Cleveland State can ask for donations, because I know John Perry had mentioned it multiple times since he's been here about getting a scoreboard, one of those the scoreboard in the middle of the arena, and he stopped talking about that about 1.5 years ago. Well,
I'm almost to the point where if I were John Perry, it's almost was he retired before he went to Cleveland State?
Yeah, remember he was the butler. He was
AD for a long time.
Yeah, and so he was the butler AD for a while, and then he came back.
Parker's CEO is a big donor.
Parker Hannafin, yes, the CEO of Parker Hannafin, Donald Washkowitz. Yes, he actually the engineering school is named after him now.
Really?
It is.
He's the chairman. Okay.
I believe Donald. He's the chairman CEO of. We've got the engineering school named after him, and the administration building is in fact called Parker Hannafin Hall.
You want to pull people into athletics from academics and keep. I mean, you want.
Here's the other thing about Cleveland State, though. I mean, these are the gentlemen who do donate now. They were a part of a much bygone era where Cleveland State athletics was. I mean, we're talking about 60s and 70s, where Cleveland State was pretty much an afterthought. I mean, it didn't become until the late 70s when you had the soccer and the volleyball teams doing well, and then in the 80s, obviously with the men's basketball, that you had significant progress and you had significant things going on. So they didn't come from that era. They came from the late 60s, early 70s, where athletics wasn't aside from swimming, because that part was that was the one thing that was very concentrated on, to the extent where Cleveland State built an auditorium that hosted NCAA championships and Olympic trials at once upon a time. Other than that, there wasn't a lot else there.
Okay, I'm just trying. I just want to know, because I know that if I'm like the czar of Cleveland State athletics,
we just run out of rich old people, man.
well, part of the problem is that you're not pulling in students, which is which is entirely because the arena is too large. So when if you do get 500 students at a game, which I'm sure would make you extremely happy, if you get 500 students at a game, that's still 1/26th of the arena. So you don't. There's nothing really to keep them coming back. Whereas at Oakland, if 500 students come to the arena, that's an eighth of the arena. If they get 1,000 students at a game, a quarter of the arena is students, and they get really excited and they want to come back and keep doing it. So part of me wonders, like, is the best course of action to try and find, raise the Wolstein Center, and then figure out how to renovate the Woodling Gym into like.
The problem and that's an interesting point, and the reason that you cannot do that with Woodling Gym is that it is landlocked. There is the rec center that they just built 10 years ago. To the left of it, there's the health services building that they built to the right of it, and right behind it, they built a parking structure. So, and all of those have been built over the last 10 years. And so unfortunately, the idea that that Cleveland State would be able to, expand the Woodling Gym to be able to create a larger facility, even if not for a larger facility, is kind of a non-starter. Not to mention the fact that when you're talking about Woodling Gym still is the home of the volleyball team and the wrestling team. So they need their own. So
own the Wolstein Center. So in the meantime, if you were to raise and rebuild that facility, or gut it like Loyola did with the Gentile Center. I mean, you talk about how it's landlocked, but with the Gentile Arena, it's about the same size as the Arc, a little smaller, so it's just a little bit bigger than what Woodling Gym is.
Yeah. Well, what I'm thinking, what the other thing that Cleveland State has to do, and again, this goes back to the location of it, is that because the Wolstein Center is so far away from the campus as a whole, and not just the campus as a whole, this includes the classrooms and the dorm rooms. There's an issue of distance that is it seems like it's kind of disconnected from the rest of the campus. So even if you do raise it and renovate it, you're still going to run into that same problem. Now, that said,
have you guys built dorms lately?
We've built a lot of dorms. That was a part of. We have built a lot of dorms in the last 10 years. We've built student apartments on the other side of campus. We've got Cleveland State's got another student housing. A student-centered housing project going on that's going to be starting, I believe, sometime this year. So
what I don't get is how come none of this was built with the Wolstein Center in mind?
Once again, they took the money that they could get for the Wolstein. You got to remember that, even with that, I mean, Cleveland State, prior to the Wolstein Center being built, there was probably a good decade and a half where Cleveland State didn't build anything. I think 1976 was pretty much the cutoff from when they were building everything. So when that was so I think the last thing that they built was, in fact, the pool. Because they built out the rest of the campus over the course of, between 64 when they started as a university to about 76, 77, when the last part of the a couple of the academic buildings and the natatorium and what ended up becoming the Wolstein Woodling Gym came together. And so you had a long gap of things where you didn't have anything being built. In fact, to your point about were there anything else being built? No. As a matter of fact, in the mid '80s, rather than build dorms, they just decided Cleveland State just decided to buy the old Holiday Inn across the street and just rename it Viking Hall.
Okay.
So you got and then after and then the Wolstein Center was built, and then they built one more building, the communications building, and then which was actually connected between the University Center and the law school. And then after that, it was another 6-7 years before they decided 5-6 years before they decided to build anything else, which was the business building and the urban building.
I'm looking at Cleveland State on Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Wolstein Center this building that's between Prospect and Carnegie?
That's the one.
Okay, so it looks to me like what's in between Euclid and Prospect where the Wolstein Center is? Where the Spingo's Court is. What is there?
That is the Days Inn. That's the hotel that's over there.
It's a hotel. So you guys could literally buy a hotel if you wanted to.
No, they did. That's owned by Cleveland State.
Oh, so they own a hotel, and are they converting that into student dorms? Or
yeah, that's still going to be a Days Inn. And that makes sense because there's really no other there. That's probably the closest. That's actually the closest accommodations to campus, so that kind of makes sense. Even though down the street you have all the hotels for Playhouse Square, but
I didn't realize that Progressive was so close.
Oh yeah. It's everything is probably within about you probably 4 or 5 6 streets down. You're down pretty much in everything. So
I just don't understand why this arena was built to be so large.
As I said in previous podcasts, the state gave them a lot of money and they took it. And they ran with it, and
taking the money, but I would take the money and build something much better and smaller.
If you've been on the Cleveland State campus, you'll see bigger and smarter for long stretches of this school's history was not really the call of the day. It really wasn't. I mean, just to give you a perspective. The large tower that Cleveland State has is Rhodes Tower, which if you are familiar with,
you on the side of the building.
What's that?
One that has the big CSU letters on the side of the building.
That's the one. That big ugly thing. Yes, that was our idea of outstanding architecture.
Yeah.
Yes, not as bad as the University Center, which was a big open space that was closed in with glass.
A big open space closed in with glass.
Big open space that closed in with glass. Yes. Come on, we affectionately called it the cage. I mean,
it looks like you have some nice green space. And
we do. Cleveland State has a lot more green space now than they did, say, 25 years ago. I mean, there's a lot more there.
Do you guys have a law school?
Oh yes, Cleveland Martial Law. Absolutely, that's where Tim Russert from Meet the Press, the late Tim Russert graduated from there.
Tim Russert went to Cleveland State for his law degree?
Yes, he got his law degree from Cleveland Marshall. Yep, he sure did. Right. We're very that's the one thing we're really, really proud of.
Man, you have a law school. You should be hitting up every single one of those people for money.
Yeah.
And really just support. I mean, it looks like the Wolstein Center is just too big for what it is.
Oh, it is too big. I think everybody can objectively agree it's too big. Even the board of trustees can objectively agree it's too big. Athletics obviously agrees it's too big. That's why they have the damn curtain.
It looks to me like there's these surface parking lots all around the Wolstein Center.
No, they are no longer there. The surface lots are. Oh yeah, the you're talking about the ones across the street. Those are privately owned, and those guys are all shady.
Well, what I was saying is we should probably buy those up and build a parking garage or build something.
No, because those greedy bastards will all probably want top dollar for it. And given the Renaissance, given the kind of overall renaissance of downtown Cleveland, they could probably get it.
Well, the unfortunate truth is that Ohio State is the school of eminent domain, the land grant school in Ohio. So you can't run around and offer them, offer to take their stuff for the cheap. But really, if a school like Cleveland State's going to expand, um, the Wolstein Center really should be the focal point of any expansion because it looks to me like if I'm looking at Cleveland State's campus,
Mm-hmm.
Google Maps does that thing where they shade in a campus to be like kind of like an off-white, kind of like a
Yeah.
cream color, whereas the rest of the buildings, the regular buildings, are all gray, and
Yeah.
then you have park spaces green. It looks
Mm-hmm.
to me like Cleveland State um, is pretty centralized,
Yes, it
and
is. It really
then,
is.
and then the Wolstein Center is just like kind of like this leg off the side,
It is.
and
I think the big thing. I think I'm not. I mean, yeah, and there's not a whole lot they can do about it at this point in time. I mean, again, they have a discussion every year about what to do with the Wolstein Center.
does the
I mean,
university have a real estate foundation?
I don't.
So a foundation that really just raises money to buy and renovate buildings.
I
Because
don't think so.
do. The UWM's real estate foundation has totally remade the campus. I mean, they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars over their time. They've built a bunch of dorms. We renovated an old Model T factory into student apartments. And we really took over North Avenue, which had been really like a place where students just hung out 6 or 7 blocks south of campus to really be like the south campus of the university.
Okay.
And the real estate foundation is how we did it. So maybe what Cleveland State needs to do is establish something like that that can buy and renovate land, buy and build. I mean, we've gotten to the point where our university is thinking along the same lines as Madison is,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm sure that Ohio State is the same,
Sure.
where you're just constantly building, constantly building.
Well, that's the, but well and that's the thing. They must have something built within their budget, within their master plan. Cleveland State does, where they're constantly building because they're still building things now. They're building. They just built a. They just finished up a building that's going to be in partnership with the nearby medical school. So the idea that there is something going on. The question is, it hasn't really, with everything that has gone on campus, and they're within the last since at least 2004 2005, the campus is completely transformed from when last I was there. At the same time, while I'm saying that, the Wolstein Center has remained the same, and that they don't know that with all this stuff that's going on, renovation wise, building wise, everything like that wise, that this particular building has basically stayed the same, and there's been nothing less than talk and maybe putting it in future plans to do something with that's there.
I think what really just kind of bothers me is that when I hear about all the dorms and residence halls and everything that you've talked about Cleveland State building, it sounds like they're doing it on the complete opposite side of campus from the Wolstein Center.
Everything's on the opposite side of the Wolstein Center. I mean, everything.
You own the Wolstein Center, and on the other side of and then there's all this land around it that could have been bought up and put. I mean, if I was planning to build a 500 bed dorm, I would look at the Wolstein Center and say, I want to have that across the street. Not because I'm a basketball fan who wants people to go to basketball games, but because I own the Wolstein Center and I want to bring in all kinds of musical acts and entertainment acts. And those places are more likely to come to my building if Cleveland State builds another, say, 3,000 to 4,000 bed dormitories, 3 or 4, maybe as many as 8 of them, and they build them all around the Wolstein Center. all of a sudden the Wolstein Center becomes a really important place for entertainment acts to be, because then entertainment acts know that there's no problem with transportation for a lot of the people that may be going to their acts. So 13,000 seats, yeah, I would do what I can to reduce the actual seating capacity of the place. I know that may be impossible to do, and it may just be too expensive to really do at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But the state needs to figure out how to work with what it has, and what it has is a building that, yes, it's too big, but let's do what we can to make the best of it. Let's, everything in between, where that Days Inn is, everything around the Wolstein Center should be Cleveland State owned, or Cleveland State alumni, or Cleveland, donors who have ties to real estate development should all be working to put actual, real estate development should be all around the Wolstein Center. I mean, the Wolstein Center should be seen as, if I'm running that program, I'm pitching to the university that the arena needs to be the center of everything, because the law school is only 2 blocks north.
No, yeah, that's right.
Only 2 blocks north.
Well, and to your point again, and it's funny you mentioned that, because again, the development is happening on the other side of a block away. You go on Euclid Avenue, and everything across the street. So you go a block down, and that's the part that always mystified me, is that Euclid Avenue is being built up. There's a lot more, tons more than ever was there when I was going to school back in the 90s. And you have so much more there, but you go down down the street, across the street from on Prospect Avenue, and you have, really nothing, which is interesting, because there are vacant buildings sitting there doing nothing, laying around, with nothing to do.
So a real estate foundation for Cleveland State would be an independent nonprofit that would be attached to the university that could buy up those vacant buildings and convert them to university use. Whether you're talking about classroom space, or you're talking about living space, or you're talking about student life space, or you're talking about just miscellaneous space that the university can use. And then that space is operated by the university and the real estate foundation in conjunction. So you can make a lot of, you can build the campus the way you need it to be built, but you can also bring in some things that maybe the university itself wouldn't be able to do. You would be able to bring in, a developer, somebody who can, somebody who wants to build an apartment complex and knows that there's the university with,
well, actually, to your point, by the way, there actually is a dorm that is that dorm that they are going to start building is actually a block down. You will be able to see the Wolstein Center from that particular dorm. So it looks like there are incremental steps to go to that point. Obviously, they went north of the northern campus first, and I guess they're kind of working their way down. But anyway.
The next 25 years building stuff, the arena is this focal point, because everything else is, along Euclid, it looks like Cleveland State already has that pretty much locked up.
Yeah.
So I would expand south and take everything there, so that anybody going to Progressive Field or anybody going to the Q from the east is literally has to run through my campus to do it.
Yeah. So
started with Cleveland State this, Cleveland State that, and it really becomes you make your campus larger and more full. So I know we got away from basketball and away from
everything, so we're gonna have to wrap it up.
Should we do 5 or 10 minutes on fan bases and coaches?
You know what? We'll catch that next week. Sorry, guys. I know that the message boards there are certain fan bases who are not happy with your coaches. We'll get you guys next week, because I don't think that's going away.
I just think that the HoriZone.
I mean, we keep ending up talking about Cleveland. I know I'm the Cleveland State guy, but damn.
I'm interested in talking about anybody's school. I mean, I talk about Green Bay. I'll talk about Green Bay and how awesome it is that can go from building to building to building without ever having to go outside.
Oh, you can do that at Cleveland State now too. You couldn't do that before, but now you can. Except for the dorms, by the way, which is hilarious. Everything but the dorms you can get to connect to.
Math tower and the chemistry building, and in between them is like a wind tunnel that in the middle of January is pretty much the worst 200 feet you could ever walk through, and a lot of times you have to do it. So we should do the same thing.
So we promise next week we'll get to the fans' disdain for their some people's fans' disdain for their coaches, and so on and so forth. But
predictions for our game with Oakland tomorrow night.
I'm gonna say that one's a toss-up just because Oakland is so unpredictable right now.
I think Detroit's going to lose to Green Bay. I think
Detroit's going to lose to Green Bay, and I will say this about the coaching: the drum beats for Ray McCallum's ouster are going to start getting louder.
That is for sure.
But we'll talk about that a little bit more of that next week.
Are happy with their coaches.
Yeah. So, all right. We'll be back next week as. Be sure to catch us and past episodes on fourlights.fm. You can also catch us on iTunes and on Stitcher and on TuneIn. And we'll see you next. I'm sorry.
Please subscribe, everybody. Please.
Everybody subscribe. We'll talk more about other things. Hopefully, not Cleveland State next week.
We'll talk about a lot of stuff. We'll try and have some people on.
Yeah.
If you're interested in coming on the show, be sure to tweet at myself or Bob.
Yes.
We're interested. We usually record on Sunday afternoons. So
yes.
If you're ready, willing, and able, please come along. We'd love to have you guys on the show.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
All right. Take care.